Okay, this is the Growth Podcast. My name is Aaron Chivitadese. I'm sitting here with my guest today, Louis Amira. He's the CEO of Crimson Advantage. He has awesome life experiences, and I'm super excited to chat with you, man. Welcome to the Growth Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to catch up. Even we're on the same continent, which might not only be the case, but great times, and we're gonna try and make the best of it and give people something fun to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, you got lots of life experience and you got tons of cool, we've been chatting for a few minutes. You have some awesome stories that we're going to get into here in a sec. But before we get into business and everything you're doing now, tell us just a little bit about yourself. Who's Louis? Where'd you come from? How'd your sort of background?
Yeah. So most people start with their job, and I don't like having my job define who I am. If you ask, I'm a competitive golfer that has a desk job. So I grew up, my dad's a golf professional. I grew up playing quite a bit of golf, competing growing up, played in college. And then as my friends were going the professional route, I realized I likely was not going the professional route and started finding some of the things that were interesting. That ended up leading towards a career in renewable energy. Was very interested in doing that. Worked at a utility during college. Worked at a smart grid startup coming out of college, and then ended up at Google, kind of hoping to go the energy route at Google and the Google.org and Google Energy initiatives, but really had a good time in the marketing and partnerships world, and eventually found my way back to startup land. So it's been an interesting journey. Started with golf, and then a series of events, including Google, changed where I ended up and where I'm at today. But hopefully the story comes full circle and there's competitive golf in the future as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Why not, right? I can totally see that in your future, Once an athlete, always an athlete. I always say athletics, it plays a huge part in your life. Myself as well, coming from an athletic background, it does a lot for your mindset, your discipline, and your self-belief, and the ability to understand that you can do something even though it seems impossible at the moment, right? Because you're around other athletes, other professionals that are pulling it off. You're like, that guy just smashed that ball 500 yards or whatever it is. I don't know golf, but numbers somewhere far,
Yeah.
right? And he's like, well, if he did it, why can't I do it? I'm going to do it, right? So you can. It gives you that self-belief, eh?
It's I describe, there are a lot of people that somehow get this, not to go too far into computer science, but this recursive function, like I want to get better, I want to improve. It's the self-improvement gene. Okay, the scientific method, I wanted to get better, but I don't know how to do that, so I want to experiment. Or, oh, this person's doing something interesting. In the athletics world, you end up seeing that a lot quicker, especially in individual sport, like we've both done. You'll see what others are doing. You'll have that desire to improve, and you win so infrequently, or at least I won so infrequently in golf, that I was always picking up things from other people and incorporating that into myself. And that ended up really manifesting even more so when I got to college, and then out in the working world, and learning from everybody around me. And it's still that curiosity I still carry today. And I think that really came in at a young age from athletics, just getting beat by others. Okay, what do I need to do to discover how to get better, how to do something different? So having that internal drive and that function of, okay, I'm going to keep self-improving, that I think it's probably where it came from.
Yeah, actually, probably. Hey, and it's also quite humbling to be around other athletes or professionals that are smashing that ball, and then you step up and you shank it. You have to be humble enough to take a look at yourself and be like, what am I doing wrong here? Where can I improve? Rather than just being pissed off that you didn't do it. Right?
Absolutely. I am one of those people that hits the ball very, very far, but not always particularly straight, which usually has some choice encounters on the fairway next door or the other hole. I walk over there while they're playing their hole, and I'm yelling four regularly. Yeah, there's a lot that, but you own it. You say, hey, you know what? I'm going to figure this out. And usually it's fun getting back into real life, and you realize that it's, you might be a little bit off the beaten path, but the journey is a lot more interesting over there. You learn more about yourself and more about the world. And hey, sometimes you might find a shortcut that others are sure not intending to explore. So you'll end up in some trouble, but you'll find that you are not in nearly as much trouble as you might have thought, which again applies to the business world.
Absolutely.
It carries over, I think, much more metaphorically than people think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great metaphor. I never thought about that. I like the shortcut idea. Yeah, you might find a shortcut that you didn't even know was there, but most people aren't even exploring that part of the the greens, so they're not going to find that shortcut, right? But you're smashing
Hmm.
balls, shanking them 600 meters, but they're off to the right, and you're off in some no man's land. But then you found like a secret passage, right? And that's how you can expand your business and grow. It's cool, man. I love it. I love it. It's working from a place of abundance instead of scarcity, outside of fear, outside of your bubble, right? All of that stuff. That's where that all comes from. Cool, man. Well, we were chatting earlier. You mentioned you went to Harvard, right? Which is very cool. Congratulations for that. I definitely didn't. I can tell you that. Um, right. So that's cool. I'd like to hear what's it like, number one, to go to Harvard? Like, what's Harvard like in general? And do you have any, memories or stories that stand out that you can remember from Harvard?
Yeah. So this is all tied together. The name of our company is Crimson Advantage because they're a bunch of old college friends that it turns out don't hire us for our branding capabilities because we were lazy. We just said Crimson is the mascot of Harvard. So we just said, oh, it's Crimson and there's probably some advantage. We'll rename that later when we get bigger. So yeah, maybe we're not the best branders. We'll find some others to do that. But
Yeah,
in
outsource
terms
that.
of in terms of being on campus, I mentioned golf a little bit. Harvard has a great, I think, athletics wide part, not to anger Jeremy Lin and some of the other amazing athletes that have come out of there, but at least in the golf team, it takes great golfers and makes them good golfers. So on the athletic side, it is maybe not the place to go chase your professional dream unless you're playing hockey and a couple other sports. On the academic side, though, it is absolutely crazy. You'll sit there in your as a freshman, you'll live in these dorms that are anywhere from 20 to a couple hundred people, and you'll start comparing, not really comparing stories, not asking others, hey, what did you do, what's your background, but it'll come up to some extent, and you'll find out there's an Olympic figure skater living above you and somebody else that owns the state record in some race, and somebody else that's raised $100,000 for cancer at age 16. And you go through these stories and you're just sort of like, wow. And people don't really, there are some people that talk about them, but there are others that you kind of have to push on them to find it. And getting to learn about those people and getting to learn about what it is that made them who they are, that's kind of the function I mentioned before about uh, being able to identify what it is that makes you learn, what it is that makes you tick. And I think the thing that I took away from Harvard, it didn't teach me any particular thing. Well, it taught me a bunch of things, but not one thing in particular. I forgot 20% of the classes I even took. Like I couldn't tell you all the classes, but it taught me how to learn. And I think that's something that most people, maybe more people get there already knowing how to learn. I didn't get there knowing how to learn quite as well as others, but being able to take something and pick it up and move quickly and become maybe not an expert, but proficient fairly quickly, and having the humbleness to know how much you don't know. That that's something that I don't know. I didn't go to other schools, but that was something that stood out as one of my main experiences. And there are some funny stories of others that came in and tried to knock some folks down. I started to tell you this story a little bit earlier on, but I studied economics, which is like the closest thing to business. There's no business degree for undergrads, but I remember distinctly, I think it was our sophomore year, maybe it was junior year, but the class was econometrics, which if you've ever taken economics before, it's statistics blended with economics to make the insights a little more actionable and provide some data behind it. Anyways, we had a new professor. I think it was the first year he'd ever taught anything. He'd just come in from, I want to say, Cal Berkeley or somewhere with a PhD. And he said, I guess it would have been junior year, he said to a group of 250, 300 people taking econometrics, first line out of his mouth, so I see you're all failures. And you've got 300 fairly high powered, many people probably went to Wall Street and other places looking at each other like, who is this person we've never met before? He goes, Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, Mark Zuckerberg, all these people dropped out by the time they got to your year. So what's wrong with you guys? Everybody's looking around. So I think he expected applause. He did not get applause. He actually ended up getting a pretty low rating by the end of the year. But I'm hopeful that the next semester and the year after, his joke maybe was a little bit different, or he at least delivered it differently. But there is that people there don't take themselves nearly as seriously as I think others on the outside do. I'm not saying the social network is maybe the perfect summary of what the experience is like, but it is such a relatable group of folks for the most part that genuinely just want to learn. That's the hobby for most people, myself included. I just want to learn about the world, about each other, all sorts of things.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's interesting. There's a lot of interesting points there. the professor saying that, that's, I guess that's his attempt at smashing down the ego of maybe some people who think like, oh, I'm in a Harvard economics class, I'm the shit, you know? And he's like, you know, just so you know,
Yeah,
you're all a bunch of
it
failures
definitely.
around here. Yeah, it's kind of funny actually.
Looking back, I think if you had taken the 30 and 35 and 40-year-old versions of ourselves looking back into
Mm.
that class, it's sort of like he had a point. I think his point was maybe delivered slightly tone deaf, but there are definitely some students that were in that class going, yeah, I think I didn't have the idea, or maybe they did start a startup and it hadn't taken off, whatever it might have been. But I think to your point, he was saying, look in the mirror, figure out what you want. That doesn't mean that you're a failure. You didn't have $1 billion business. You're not running Microsoft at age 19 or anything like that. Uh, but check your ego at the door. We have some things to learn here. Uh, let's get to this. And uh, I think I actually appreciate it more now than I did then. It's amazing what gray hair and some wisdom will do for your perspective.
Absolutely. Take that to the bank. Hey, take that to the bank. Isn't that the truth? Hey, funny. I mean, if I could go back in time, I went to undergrad in the States, nice school, you know, I did a master's in Europe. If I could go back in time, I would do school so differently than I didn't go to school. I'm one of the typical ones. Like I spent more time avoiding class and doing stuff I shouldn't be doing. Didn't learn anything. Literally didn't. I put as little effort as possible into the classes, and most people around me were as well. It was just how it was. And looking back on it now, 20 years later, I would kill to go back there and listen to those
Oh,
sociology professors talk about fossils and stuff. Like, take me to that history class and tell me about Roman culture. Like, please, I want to sit and learn this stuff. Then I was like, oh,
it's
you're killing me. I just want to go like to the bar or whatever. I want to go watch the game or whatever we were doing. Stupid shit.
it's it's so true. People, there are 2 points there that really hit home for me. One of them is I wish I would have taken a gap year.
Mm.
Looking back, I wish I would have taken a gap year. I would have, I think, approached school a lot different. Um, who knows? I would have probably been angry that I had to take a year off as opposed to go start drinking with my friends and competing in sports and all that sort of stuff. But I think that would have been good. It would have given me the real life perspective. I don't know how many listeners are, you know, thinking about college, might be getting ready to go to college, but that year being out in the real world will give you at least some perspective that will change what you think and probably how seriously you take things. But I also say, uh, people go, well, what would your dream vacation be? Where would you go? What would you see? And people expect to hear, I don't know, the Seychelles or some island or something like that. And I tell people I would go back to my senior year of college and spend a week there or a month there, not for the reasons of, oh, I want to go drinking with my friends one last time or partying or any of that stuff, but just to go back and see what that was like. And if I could have a conversation with myself saying, hey, here's some things that, you should know. You should treat this senior year a little bit differently. You should spend more time with your friends, not just talking about, hey, where are we going to go? What's the cool place to go have dinner? That sort of thing. But what is it that you want out of life? Where are you trying to go? What are your goals? And recognizing that when you're looking around at people as you get older, people in general are very good at making things up as they go. Some of the best business people, I think, it's not that they have the best framework or the best approach, but they have a way of feeling comfortable and not being scared and saying, okay, maybe I'm going to pattern match this to some other experience I've had, or I'm just going to trust that this isn't as scary or as bad as we think. Like, we're going to find the right way out of this. And I don't think I knew that at a young age. And it impacted me a bit in the early parts of my career because I just assumed that everybody around me knew something that I didn't know. And
Mm.
over time, you realize, like, no, they're just really, really good at making things up as they go and generally being right about what it is that they're making up as they go. Like, they're doing it from an educated place and they're refining things quickly. And that, I did not know as a 21-year-old. Uh, and I'm sure that the version of myself 20 years from now would probably have the same chat with myself today.
Mm, yeah, cool. But that's you're very self-aware though. That's key, you know. It's true. Hey, yeah, I had the same belief growing up, and it's the same thing, you know, like you think that the people around you have it totally figured out and that you're the one who's missing the piece. You're like, man, how do they do that? They must. And then as you grow and you network with people and you meet other people that are doing business and you realize everybody's just human. They're just doing their thing. Some people are just taking faster, more deliberate action with an intended clear vision and taking the steps to get there and pivoting and moving and adjusting their way through. while other people are being either paralyzed in fear and never acting, or taking sporadic actions in various directions. I'm sure you've seen the focus wheel where you're going out or you're going straight, right? They're going all over the place like this. And it just comes down to understanding that you can get there, but it's up to you, really,
Oh,
right?
I say that I say that all the time, and this might get me in trouble with some of my old Google friends, but there were teams that I was on at Google that gave me the belief that Google 5 years ago, maybe a couple more than that. I think Google was maybe is the greatest collection of slightly risk averse people that's ever been assembled. Like there are people there that for whatever reason they want that life balance, they want something different, they want to work on big problems, but there are a bunch of people that could be the next uh, Snapchat founders or Facebook founders or Uber founders or anything. And many of them ended up going to do that sort of thing. But I think a lot of those people have that drive and that desire to do it. But they, myself included, I wanted to leave for a few years and I couldn't quite take that step to do the startup world. Like my whether it was my parents or my friends, why would you leave? You're at a great place, you're doing well, you're getting promoted. Like why would you ever go start your own thing? And it's nothing against Google. I absolutely loved working there. I loved the people that I worked with, but it was sort of the getting over that risk averse step and also believing in yourself to some extent. And the quote that I've probably read on a bumper sticker, but have just internalized quite a bit more over time is uh, the people that should take the biggest risks are A, hopefully the ones that are most likely to succeed, but B, much more importantly, if they fail, are best equipped to recover. And I don't think people think about themselves highly, like think about yourself in one of those two scenarios. And if you don't think that you're either going to succeed or you're well equipped to recover, okay, then maybe not. But uh, be honest with yourself, and you're probably not. You're probably much more well equipped to recover than you realize. And that's something that I don't think enough people have the confidence in themselves to take that step.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. I agree. So talk to us a bit about Google, man, before we get into what you're doing now. I mean, you're kind of one of these guys. Like I have all sorts of funny questions for you that I'm not going to go into too deep. Like if I would circle around to Harvard, I'd start asking you about secret societies and things there, but I'm not going to. In Google, a lot of people say, it's the best place to work in the world. You guys have like sleep pods, and you see this stuff on the internet about Google about how it's awesome and it's like a utopia workspace. What's it really like?
Yeah, so it is. So the social network was somewhat accurate in terms of describing Harvard, but a lot of it was embellished. Uh, what was the movie The Interns with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson about
Yes.
Google? I'm not saying that people were out playing like Quidditch in the lawn. There were people playing games like that. Don't get me wrong. People are having a good time. There are gyms. There are outdoor gyms. I'm a former CrossFitter, not as good at CrossFit anymore. You could do CrossFit. They have classes organized through Google. There's all sorts of stuff that makes it feel like a college campus, and it is a college campus to some extent. Like I had a similar experience where I felt weird not paying for food at what felt like a Starbucks. Um, but what you'll realize, and I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but they will give you all the perks to keep you there. There's laundry machines, there's gyms, all that. There would be, when I lived in San Francisco, there'd be a week that would go by where I would get on the shuttle Monday morning, get down there, exercise, and I would stay through dinner, get my dinner to go, and hop back on the shuttle with leather seats and Wi-Fi and all that to drive me back up to San Francisco. I wouldn't touch my wallet for a week. It would get to be Friday night and we'd go out to dinner, we'd go out to have drinks or something. And that'd be the first time that I touched a credit card or a bill or anything. And it's not that that's unhealthy. There's a certain, I think, age bracket and all that where that makes sense, but you don't necessarily realize what's happening, and you don't realize maybe how your thinking is very myopic to some extent. They do an incredible job of trying to bust diversity and fix some of the biases and all that. Like they try and train all the people as best they can. But there's a lot of folks that sit there, and I think probably the most accurate reflection, at least of the folks that I talked to, was I want to go do this thing. I want to go start my company. I want to take this risk, but things are so good here. I'm working on problems that impact 1 billion people. I'm helping this service where I donate $5,000 a year from my salary and Google matches it. Like there's some crazy things that are just, why would you walk away from that? but I don't think enough people take that step, because if you don't succeed in whatever it is that you're doing, chances are Google's still hiring for a role. If you leave on the right terms, you can go back. So
Mhm.
overall, I would say that it is an amazing place to work. There are absolutely problems in it, in the sense that people have stress, people are sometimes overworked, they end up on a bad team, there are new managers, like any of this big, it is not perfect. Nobody there would, I think, say it's perfect. I think it gets a bad rep to some extent on some of these things because it's an easy target, but
Mhm.
I absolutely loved my time there. I probably spent a year or two more there than I maybe should have. Uh, but if you want to go there and have a flexible, you can change over to pretty much any team you can think of. Like if you don't have a PhD in nuclear physics, you're probably not going to work on a team studying cold fusion. But if you have an interest in Google Glass, or you have an interest in the developing world, and you have some skill set that can apply there, you will be able to rotate to Bangkok, or you'll be able to spend time in Manila or in Johannesburg. Like you'll be able to get a role there. And that is pretty crazy to think about. There aren't many companies out there that um, allow for that flexibility. And I had 5 different roles there, and I loved the ability to explore all of those. It was like the MBA that I never went and got, which
Mm.
was cool.
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it sounds to me like they've just created such a good self-serving environment for the company that when you're in it as an employee, it's like it sounds like the ultimate golden handcuffs to me. Like it sounds
It
like the ultimate version of that.
it almost, unless you don't get promoted on the schedule you think you should, or you get a manager and you work on a project that has horrible hours and bureaucracy and all that, which does happen. I don't think Google hides that it happens. They don't tout it, but uh, like, yeah, you'll get frustrated. You'll feel the reason that you should leave, and you'll work up some motivation to do that. But for the most part, people don't really ever have a reason to leave, or they get the perspective. They'll talk with friends somewhere else, and the friends are sort of like, you don't have actual problems. Like you're
Yeah,
complaining about things that are not real problems. You
yeah,
go back and eat some more French toast for free or something like that. Like
yeah.
uh,
You're like,
it's
damn it, I haven't spent any money this week. Jesus.
yeah, seriously, like
This is
that.
brutal.
The fact that and to be fair, I bet 60 to 70% of the Google employees that ride the bus from San Francisco down and back, or to anywhere in the Bay Area, they probably haven't had that realization, which is crazy. Like you just don't talk about that. I talked about it with some friends, and I think over the course of, one of the friends actually tracked it, and he was like, yeah, I think I touched my wallet 4 times on weekdays over the course of a month, which is crazy to think about. Like that's probably not okay if we're talking 20-year time horizons. But
Mm.
anyways, yeah, some of the things that first world problems is the term that the kids use these days. So
Absolutely, yeah. But
plenty of those.
plenty of those, but it makes sense. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, breaking away from that mold can be very difficult. It's a big decision. And I could see how a lot of people would get shook there and not pull the trigger. And also on the other side of the coin, the golden handcuffs, having everything taken care of, the utopic type working environment and fixing big problems and working on amazing projects. I mean, come on, it's Google, right? Being there and doing that, there's a lot to be said for the problems you face. It's like anything, the bigger the problem, the bigger that you have to meet it with your own energy, right? It's so if you're facing these massive problems and you're working with these amazing people and everything's just on fire and you're like, whoa, you're giving a lot of output to maintain that, right? Which probably gets swept under the rug a little bit, I would bet. Hey.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there are some individual efforts that go unnoticed. Like somebody might tweak something that makes life better for 50 million people. Life better, I should put in quotes, but makes it to where people in India that have slow internet speeds can't. There might be a discovery where search now works 50% faster or uses way less data, and that might impact 50 million people in the developing world that don't have unlimited data the way that we think about it. Um, and those sorts of things, okay, that's a person that came up with whatever the idea was. Okay, yeah, that gets credit to Google, but that was a person that literally just made 50 million people able to get a Wikipedia answer that they wouldn't have been able to get. Either now it's free or now it gets there in 3 seconds. Like that sort of stuff is happening every day in offices all over the world, and people don't really think about that because it's much easier to just say, oh, Google should pay more taxes, or what are they doing destroying businesses? And it's sort of like, okay, that's true. And the PR team does a great job of trying to highlight those other ones, but it's a tough battle. I mean, I was on a few of those projects. I worked on some pretty cool things that um, saw the light of day, and you saw like the face-to-face appreciation with people. One of them was Doodle for Google, which we can talk about. Like there are moments where all of it is worth it. Everything that you get, the bad press, the everything like that is absolutely worth it, because you see when people use something or you positively impact their lives, like that makes it worth it. And that honestly is the the entrepreneurial journey. It's having more moments like that, being more direct and not being separated by tens of thousands of other employees and billions of people using your products. Like that'd be a great problem to have, but I'm not Sergey Brin or Larry Page. I can't just say, oh, look at the company I created. Like I was a very small cog in a very remote part of a wheel.
Yeah, but it takes all the pieces, right? That's the whole point. It takes all those cogs for sure. Cool, man. So when you stepped out of that, and you stepped into something new, and you decided, okay, I'm doing this thing, stepped into the fear and pushed through it. How did you discover your current business direction?
Yeah. So I, it started actually, obviously it started while I was at Google, but I was transferring into a group, a somewhat unknown group there called Area 120. And that group, the play on that is you take 20% of Googlers used to be able to take 20% of their time and work on any project they want, as long as they got some amount of approval. Hey, go take a day a week and work on that sort of stuff. Gmail was invented that way. There are a bunch of classic examples they talk about. They actually formalized that program and called it Area 120, because it was, instead of it being your 20% time, it was your 120% time. Like you just did this on the weekend or in your extra hours or whatever.
Mm.
So in effect, Google said, we're going to have a startup incubator. You are not going to have another job for 6 months. You are going to work on your project with some other teammates. We're going to fully fund it. You are responsible for your project. And at the end of 6 months, if it's going well, we'll give you 6 more months or a year, and maybe you'll grow the team, with the intention that this becomes its own company. So I had been thinking about leaving Google. I'd been trying to leave Google, one of my failed attempts, and applied with a pretty cool idea that I actually don't know what I'm allowed to share, but it was an entertainment type app that wasn't like YouTube or anything like that. It was more like an infrastructure for entertainment. Anyways, we got in to Area 120, and I went, oh, okay, well, I have to see this through. Who knows how this is going to work? With this smaller business idea in the background kind of lingering. Uh, Loved that experience, but throughout the process of 120, that business started to look more and more attractive. And what that business was initially was just a digital marketing agency. So my wife's a dentist; they own dental practices, and we were sitting there going, "Okay, I've managed ads in the past. I have some friends that have experience in marketing technology and things like SEO and building brands." And I went, "Okay, if I take the skills that I've learned for advertisers that spend $5 million a quarter or $100 million a quarter, like some of our bigger ones, does that work for a dental office? Does that work for a chocolate company? Do those things apply to small and medium businesses?" And it turns out they did. And we were having some pretty good success with just friends, in effect. Like we were basically doing this for free, just helping our friends grow their businesses. And as they started to see success, the investors in those businesses or the board members of those businesses started to recommend us to other investments that they'd made. And before we really had a chance to realize it, we had this digital marketing group that was getting created. We started to hire people, and at that happened after I left Area 120. I wasn't sitting at Google running another empire, but it was. I could see I could see the success was starting to happen. Like, okay, yes, if this works for my wife's business, if this works for the chocolate company, like, yeah, we probably need to make this more official. So we left. We didn't even have a website, which was kind of funny for a digital marketing group. We couldn't really find us online. Left, started working on that, and it's continued to grow and evolve into a few other things. But it really just started off as, hey, how can we help companies grow their business online and offline to some extent?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're helping yourself grow and you're helping others grow,
Yeah,
right? So you have like a dual thing sort of happening here. You're internally obviously growing your own business, and then you're taking now correct me if I'm wrong, you're taking what's working and you're helping others with what you learn on yourself. Like that, is it kind of like you're your own case
it
study kind of
works.
thing?
It works both ways. So we didn't
Mm,
have anything. There was nothing that we were selling at the start. Like we didn't have widgets or fancy sneakers or magic cereal or any of that sort of stuff. But we started working with these companies and saying, okay, well, we know some of these things work. You need this level of analytics. You need to know how email works. Facebook and Instagram is a thing. You should know how that works. By the way, Amazon, you probably should sell on Amazon for a number of reasons if your margins allow.
mm,
So we were realizing across all of these businesses, across all these different industries, that there were some things that were pretty uniform that were were challenges. We've got one that we're turning into a product uh, right now because we've seen it work with enough different companies that, hey, everybody should have something like this. Maybe they have it already, but if they don't, this is going to save you some time and give you some interesting insight. So we realized in working on other companies that there were going to be products or different things that we could offer and start to build those for our clients and ultimately sell to others. And we also have it set up now to where part of our part of our revenue goes towards funding some of these ideas, whether they're from ourselves or our friends. We want to be incubating products and incubating companies, and we're in some later stage R&D process right now where we have products that we would like to grow. And if you want to grow products or grow a company, what do? You go to a group and figure out how to do it on Google and Facebook. So we have the skills to make our own companies successful, which many of our bigger competitors and some of the companies we aspire to, uh, they have that business model. And we've absolutely borrowed a ton of inspiration from what they're doing. So we are growing other companies, which is allowing us to grow ourselves. And hopefully that makes everybody better off across the board in the end.
yeah, for sure, man. That's awesome. I love it. So yeah, you're taking the best parts of everything. You're learning on the fly. You're implementing as you go, and you're growing yourself. You're growing others. You're fully in growth mode. Maybe for the listeners out there who like, they're hearing, oh, he worked it. He went to Harvard. He did this. He did that. I can't do it. That fear based, you know, self-sabotage loop that people get in where they tell themselves they're not good enough. I can't do it. It's not for me, kind of thing. What would you tell someone who is just thinking about either leaving corporate to go entrepreneur, or they're in college, and I'm not saying drop out of college, but they're just not feeling what they're doing, or they've started something and failed, and they want to quit and give up, and they think it's all, the world's coming to an end. What would you tell someone who's sort of in that space mentally?
It it's funny how if people have listened to the entire episode, at the very beginning we were talking about, uh, at least in the golf world, the analogy is if you swing hard and hit it in another fairway, you might discover a shortcut. Like you should not be scared when you're standing there of hitting it in the other fairway. You might hit one out of bounds, you might mess up. You're not you're likely not going to die on the golf course from having hit a bad shot. Chances are that's not going to kill you. It's the same sort of thing, whether you're thinking about leaving or you're in college thinking about doing something different. You need to swing at something. You need to swing preferably hard at something. Give it a try. You won't know if it's going to work until you've tried. So for some people, that might be, okay, I'm going to go try and sell my services, or I'm going to go try and build my own thing. I have a friend, a very good friend who works with us now, and he had this idea for, I think I can cook Neapolitan pizzas in my own oven. Now, people that know pizza, that takes it getting up to like 900 degrees, and those ovens don't go beyond 450, maybe 500. He ended up tinkering and tinkering and ended up coming up with a device that gets your oven to 900 degrees. Now, I'm not going to talk about the product. This isn't a pitch or anything like that, but he went out and did it, and it has become a reasonably successful company, and it's selling a lot more products because he went out and did something about it. It wasn't just, oh, somebody will come up with that one day. I'm sure somebody else had this idea. He said, what do I need to do? I probably need metal. I probably need some aluminum foil. I need a thermometer. And okay, let's just go see how that works. So that's a very specific example of, okay, just try. And it's hard to tell people to just try because usually it's getting over that first thing. I'm going to sit down and write a business plan. Okay, well, you should write a business plan. Don't write a 15-page business plan though. Like if your thing is predicated on selling something to somebody, go talk to those 5 customers and see what it is that they need, because they might tell you that they need something very different and they all might tell you the exact same thing. Don't build the thing that you think that the world needed. Listen to them. You might end up coming back to the thing that you wanted to build, but just listen to people. Go talk to somebody. Just take that step. Don't get fired as a result of it. Don't drop out of school to take that step. But if you can't identify that step, chances are you probably haven't thought hard enough about decomposing the problem into what that first step is. And that would be what I would encourage people. Don't be afraid to take that first step. If it's that scary of a first step, there's probably a smaller step that you can take.
Yeah, absolutely. Chunk it down, right? Reverse engineer it and chunk it down. And super important thing. I hope that landed for everyone listening. If you're listening right now, he just said something that is extremely important for business and entrepreneurship in general. Don't create something and marry it thinking that you know what the market wants. Go to the marketplace, ask them what they want, collect data on it, and then solve that problem for them or give them that service they're hungry for. That's a huge problem that so many people have a problem with, especially early on, because you come up with this grandiose idea. It's the best thing ever. You know, like I love Shark Tank, right? I'm sure you watch Shark Tank or are familiar with it. The reason I love it is because I love entrepreneurship. I love people that are going after their dreams. Shark Tank, for those of you who don't watch it, do it. It's one of the few TV shows I actually do watch. And, you know, it's got billionaires and millionaires giving their advice to entrepreneurs. It's like the perfect learning environment. It's awesome. But the thing that I hear them say all the time, and this goes to your point about making sure that you go to the marketplace first, is someone will show up and they'll be like, hey, you know, I built this thing and I've been working on it and I need funding to get to the next level. And Mark Cuban will be like, cool, man. How long have you been working on this thing? The person's like, 10 years. He's like, okay, how many sales have you made? The guy will be like, none. I haven't even, this is my prototype. And Mark Cuban will be like, you've married the idea. And the guy will be like, yeah, it's the best thing ever. And then he'll pitch for half an hour talking about why it's the best thing ever. But in reality, if the market's not responding to it, it just means that you're emotionally married to it, right? Which is the biggest mistake you can make as an entrepreneur, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we initially thought when we came together, the group of friends that were talking about starting this, we said, maybe we'll make like a Shopify app that allows you to bundle products. That is not what we made. We didn't even get that far down the path. We were just like, oh, Shopify's up and coming and they're not really a good bundling app out there. So let's just go that route. And luckily we had the product management background and the entrepreneurial background enough to go, how many people are actually looking for that? Okay, maybe not. We have a lot of friends asking us day in and day out, hey, can you help me grow my company? Okay, let's start there. Like, what does that look like? What do they need? Why can't they find anybody else? That there are millions of agencies out there. Why can't they find them? Oh, well, they don't trust them. They don't know. Okay, well, that's a different problem we're trying to solve. So yeah, it was just having that first step and not being so married to, oh, we're going to go hire a software engineer and try and build the Shopify thing and spend $100,000 and never have anybody use it. That would have been a waste of time. Now, there are ideas that certain people end up sticking down that path. And Steve Jobs is a great example. Like, he knew what people want before they did. But Steve Jobs failed a lot on the way there. And he developed that sense over a lot of failures and over a bunch of other things. He didn't just wake up as a 21-year-old and say, I know that people want this thing called the iPod 25 years. Like, that's not what, it was not that. It was not, oh, the iPhone's the next thing. There were a bunch of indicators on the way there. And he changed course as many folks do, as we have dozens of times. I talked to my team last week about a different approach that we're going to take. Sales versus operations. Like, we are going the route of focusing more on operations than sales. So that's it's something where you don't really realize that you're making big decisions until you look in hindsight and go, oh wow, I could have gone down a very different, very bad path. But I came up for air. I listened to what others said. I use it as a data point, and then make your decision as a result. But yeah, it's take something to market. Please don't spend 6 months trying to figure something out. If you take that long to figure out how to build it or plan to spend 6 months building it before talking with anybody about it, I can almost guarantee that Mark Cuban, when you walk in on Shark Tank, will laugh at you and not fund you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly right. It's like, you know, how long have you been, you're married to this thing? No. For these reasons, I'm out.
Yeah, exactly.
For these reasons, I'm out. It's a running joke my wife and I have whenever we come across something that, like, you know, oh, do you want to eat here for dinner kind of thing? And we'll look at it and, like, for example, it'll be something we don't like. We'll be walking through Rome. We live there, right? We were talking about Italy. Walk through Rome, like, this pizza place or that pizza place. We'd be like, well, this pizza place has shade and this pizza place has sun. well, because of that shade for these reasons, we're out. It's like, it's a running joke we have. It's quite funny.
And it's funny you say that. I would say applying that even more directly, if you have a friend group of 4 or 5 people and they all say it's a great idea, keep talking to people about it until you get the it's a bad idea. Like, you need somebody to tell you that it's a bad idea and why.
Mm.
I mean, I, the number of businesses that didn't get funded early on because people thought it was Uber's a good example. I don't think Google got funded early on for um, Amazon was a different story with Jeff Bezos, but there are a number of stories of these people that get rejected over and over again. And okay, yeah, that person eventually got through it. They made the tweaks, whatever it might be. But having your friends or others give you that positive affirmation, it's useful in that what they're really telling you is, please go take that step. Not necessarily this is the best business idea I've ever heard, but yeah, you should go take that step. You should also categorize that as such, and then look for the negative feedback, because that's what's going to make your idea better. That's what's actually going to polish it. And your friends might not have the knowledge or the industry expertise or whatever. Go try and find those people. People are generally very approachable. Maybe not on LinkedIn as they used to be, or maybe not like walk up to the Goldman Sachs and knock on the door and tell them your fintech idea. But people, it's not that hard to find people that are knowledgeable. Listen to podcasts, write people. Like, you're approachable, I'm approachable, send us ideas and we will give you some feedback, because chances are it's probably not the best idea we've ever heard. And we'll give you that honest feedback and say, hey, this is what I would do to make things work a little bit better, or to make it a little bit easier to scope that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's some great advice right there. Great advice. You're right. I never thought about it from that frame. You know, your friends, granted, they don't have the expertise, but they're helping push and stoke your fire, right? Like, yeah, do it, man. It's awesome. It sounds good. They're not necessarily saying that thing is good. They're saying the step is good, right? That's a great analogy, man. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. I hope that landed for everybody. That's a big lesson right there. And then go out to the experts in that niche, in that industry, and get some concrete feedback based on their experience and everything, more like a mentorship sort of relationship, right? Cool.
Exactly.
It's awesome, man.
Exactly.
Cool, man. Well, you've had quite the journey, eh? You've had quite the journey there, shanking balls on the golf course, going through Harvard.
I still do a bit of that.
Yeah, going through Harvard and doing the Google thing. That's very cool. And then going out on your own, building businesses and helping other businesses grow. That's awesome, man. And now you're going to go full circle, and you're going to be on the senior PGA tour or something at some point. Is that what's going to go on here?
That's the hope.
Are we going to see it?
It's been a random. I would say it's been a random journey. Like, it seems like, oh yeah, all those check boxes made perfect sense, but there was a very, I think back when I was 16 and I was getting recruited to play golf in all these different places, there was I don't remember it looking back that vividly, but I was very close to picking a different path and trying to go to a school that would set me up to play golf professionally as my entire focus. Like, take classes with tutors teaching me the class and not really spend much time in the classroom. Like, I could have granted, I could be on TV every weekend. Chances that were slim, but there was a very different path that I could have ended up going down. And I think the same thing has happened in my career over and over again. And part of it has been that sort of that desire to find, okay, what's behind this other door? Like, yeah, that one sounds interesting. That sounds appealing, but let me peek behind this door and see what it is. And knowing that when you first react to something, that is, you are naturally wired to have that very scared or very excited reaction. Chances are it's not going to be that exciting or that scary. And when you rein back and recognize, like, oh, I felt scared, but even as scared as I was, that wasn't even that bad. I can assure you the actual journey is not going to be that scary. So that's something that I don't think people appreciate when they're initially feeling those things or thinking those things.
That's a good call too, man. That's a good call. Yeah. I love that. Whew, you're blowing my mind a little bit here, man. I love it.
Oh,
it's good.
We didn't even start talking about the singularity and living in a simulation and all that sort of stuff.
Let's get into that if we want to. I got time, man. I'm down. I want to hear about that. Sounds interesting. What's that all about? Give it to us in a nutshell. You don't need to take us down the rabbit hole, but give us a glimpse, man. Give us a glimpse.
There are definitely parts of what Elon Musk does and thinks about and tweets and all that I very much love. There are other parts that confuse me and I'm not smart enough to understand, let alone probably want to understand. Uh, but the simple thought exercise for those that haven't thought about or aren't that well versed in how technology is improving and sort of the exponential nature that a technology keeps improving. One of the examples he gives, and I'm going to maybe water it down to the point that I understand it. So sorry if this isn't accurate to everybody that knows this really well. But he basically says video games and that sort of thing are getting more and more accurate over the years. 20 years ago, it looked ridiculous. 5 years ago, it looked a little more lifelike. You look at video games today; they're looking pretty crazy how accurate they are. 5 to 10 years from now, they're going to be incredibly accurate. We're just talking about video games. Uh, what is it to say 20 years, 50 years, 100 years from now that those video graphics, like, they will be as real life as possible? They might be even more real life. And if we think that we are the only species on the only planet in the only solar system with all of the quadrillions of other stars and everything out there that we don't know about, there's a very good chance that we're living in some sort of simulation. So the point that we're all characters in one of these video games, we're living in a simulation. And the way that somebody was interviewing Elon Musk a couple of years ago, and they asked him that question. They said, "Do you think we're living in a simulation?" He goes, "I will only answer that by saying that we are no longer allowed to talk about that in a hot tub." And they were like, "What does that mean?" He goes, "I talk about it so often that it comes up when I'm just sitting in the hot tub with random people." I was like, I'm sort of like, your life is way more interesting than mine. You're sitting with people in hot tubs talking about simulations. But anyways, it is a point to make, like, the exponential nature of things. To think 15 years ago that BlackBerry was out, you could sort of access the internet on your phone. Now it's hard to think about a place in the world you can go and not have internet, not be able to watch a YouTube video, not listen to this conversation. Hopefully we get people everywhere listening to this conversation. What is it going to be 15 years from now? That's the sort of thing that's that I like to spend a lot of time thinking about and dreaming about, like living in the future to some extent, and then trying to connect the dots between what does that future look like and what should I be working on today to try and be in good shape 15 years from now.
Yeah. Oh man, I love this stuff too. I love it. I think it's awesome. Yeah, man. The
It's a
chances,
can of worms.
oh, it's a serious can of worms, but living in a simulation, when you're talking about universal intelligence and source, right? You can talk to somebody very deep who meditates a ton. They're multi-dimensional. And when people are talking about source and download and codes and all these things, my brain automatically thinks, well, that's the simulation running. You're picking up the transmission from wherever it's coming from, and you're catching it, and either you're blind and closed in and you're not catching it, or you're open and you are receiving, and
You're getting your software update. That's what's happening.
You're getting an update. You're literally upgrading. And like, seriously, that my brain just, I love it so much. I could just think and talk about it all day, every day. I just think it's so cool, right? Like, at the end of the day, this is the ultimate question. Like, what are we here for? What's going on with all this stuff? If you start going down Elon Musk's brain of thinking, like the way I think we think similar to the way he's thinking, from what I can gather from you, like, if that's the way it's going, if that's what it is, ultimately, if you could figure it out somehow, holy crap. Like, wow.
That's where there was a point in time, and if the golf career doesn't work out and the business career works out swimmingly, then there's a group that that Google acquired called DeepMind, and they're behind the Go. It's a game that originated in Asia. It's kind of like chess, but with an incredible number of moves. Long story short, the DeepMind folks have done some machine learning that is years ahead of what experts thought, which makes people think, okay, wow, we are actually much closer to this than we might be. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and be ruled by robots or anything like that. But the pace of it, like the accelerating nature of how fast all of this is getting, quote unquote, smarter. It's a crazy thing to think about. It's a crazy thing to think about your career. What is it that you want to do? How do you want to add value? Really go out there and work on things that you care about, because a lot of things are probably going to get automated to some extent. If you find that sort of stuff that we're talking about interesting, go look at computer science, go learn a little bit about machine learning. There are a bunch of free places to go do that. One of the things that bothers me the most about people that say, oh, I want to learn how to code, the number of places you can go write your first program for free in 6 hours, you could learn from YouTube or any of these other sites. I don't think you actually want to do that as bad as you think you do, because you would have already done it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. In today's age, if you want to go learn something or do something, if you're not doing it, you're simply not doing it. Your actions speak louder than words. Word talk is cheap, right? And especially now. I mean, you want to learn guitar? YouTube it. Grab a guitar. You want to code? Go find a place to code. I don't know where to code, but if I wanted to, I could figure it out in a day. I'm sure of it. I would go find a place. Where do I code? YouTube that, do it. It's done, right? Okay, hold on. We got to get back to Elon Musk and stuff here. Okay, a couple things. So for one, Starlink, right? Starlink's out ripping around the earth. I was out last night looking at it with my parents. I was like, check that out, showing them. And it was the first time I ever saw it also live. What's that all about, man?
There was, I feel like I'm going to get in trouble for saying things about Google, but I think this was all public. There was a point in time where Google actually invested in SpaceX. It might be very little known. I think it was with Fidelity or something. Anyways, they invested in SpaceX because they wanted to do some aerial imagery mapping and all sorts of things. And that was my first exploration into some of this stuff. Then you start thinking about Starlink and what Starlink specifically is doing. It's giving you this connectivity around the world. If you don't know how the internet works, there are a bunch of cables that are connected, but there's also data that just travels through the air. That's why your cell phone works. It can connect to these places that beam the internet. Satellites work the same way. They connect together. They transmit data. That's why you have what'll be 5G when you want to go to the Galapagos Islands at some point in the future. Like that will just all work. Starlink, though, is not just for Earth. The envisioning point behind that is eventually when humans are on Mars in 10 years, 20 years, whatever it might be, you can deploy that there. And on Mars, you will have the internet, which is crazy to think about, or internet-like functionality. The speed of light, as we understand it today, it takes a little while to go from Mars to Earth. But anyways, yeah, the idea there being you have internet all the time, anywhere you want to be, and it's going to be at an increasing rate. So you will have faster and faster internet around the world, which allows you to walk around in virtual reality, or allows you to play video games that are streamed at crazy speeds. All these things that, again, 15 years ago would have been crazy to think about. Like, oh, I'm going to play Fortnite on my cell phone while I'm walking down the street in some rural part of the United States. No, that if you told somebody that 20 years ago, they would have thought it was magic. So that's where imagining what might happen in 20 years is craziness. So
Absolutely.
anyways, just following that is fascinating. It already feels like 5 years ago was history. So
yeah, right. Totally.
We're living history right now.
100%, man. It's crazy. Like, one of my mentors that I chat with all the time about, he teaches me about NLP and stuff a lot, but he always says it. He's like, man, such an abundant time. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we have access to more than the Egyptian pharaohs had, right? That the Queen of England had just 15 years ago, that the President of the United States or superpower nations had 15 years ago. We have it now, sitting at home. Joe Blow, chilling on his couch, has more access to more information faster, can communicate with people around the world face to face than anybody in history. And it's amazing to think in that frame, right?
And so I think the challenge shifts to each person. Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Okay. You can sit here and try and learn about things all day long and make an entire life out of just reading Wikipedia. I had a college roommate who would go down Wikipedia holes, would go check on him at 2 a.m. and he'd be reading about like the I don't know, the origination of the surfboard. Like, okay, I don't know how you got here. He doesn't know how he got there, but
yeah.
he would be well versed in that. But at the same time, if you're sitting there thinking like, oh, I could never go work, to use Google as an example, or to use Amazon, we're just talking about tech companies, but if you want to go be the best biotech, which is another crazy area, like if you want to go be the next genetic programmer, you can take those first couple steps. And chances are, if you take 12 hours worth of online classes through edX or watch YouTube videos, if you're not excited about it at the end of 12 hours, you probably don't want to spend the rest of your life going down that path. So yeah, what do you do with that data? What do you do with all of the learning that you can do right now? You can test way faster than you would have ever been able to in the past. In the past, if you wanted to go be a blacksmith 700 years ago, well, how would you do that? Okay, you're going to go probably be an understudy. I forget the exact term, but you'd go work in a blacksmith shop for 7 years, and then maybe you'd be able to take over for them or start your own in a town 20 miles away. Like, that is, people today can't even think about that as an option. Like, people would sit there and look at Facebook and Instagram and go, oh, this person's a millionaire, they only worked at that for 3 months. Like, if I can't reach that, I'm a failure. No, first of all, they probably didn't just work at that for 3 months. Second of all, they're probably not making $1 million. And third, even if they are, ask them what it was. If they're your friend, what were they doing? How did they get there? How did they start off? What was their first step? I feel like that's hopefully hearing from more and more people that, hey, just take that small first step towards whatever it is. See if you like it. See if it's resonating. Don't spend a year dreaming about it. If you're thinking about it in the shower every day for a year, do something about it. Do something about it.
Yeah, exactly. 100%, man. Totally. I agree. Okay. I got to do it. I have to do it. I have to, I have to, man. I have to circle back around, and we got to get back into Elon Musk here for a sec. And
I love it.
And talk a little bit about, because, that's why you love it. So that's why I want to go there. He's a futuristic dude, right? I mean, come on. He's leading the charge for so many things. It's just phenomenal. Things that people don't even know about, things that I don't even know about. He has so much shit going on. It's crazy. He's got his tunnels. He's got his Tesla stuff. He's got his solar. He's got the satellites. Like, he's got so many things. It's just insanity in a good way that's going on. Now, a guy like this, one of the wealthiest people in the world, one of the most famous people in the world. I'm just listing what he is, like, in my mind. Wealthy, famous, okay? Thought leader, obviously, super intelligent, understands physics and robotics and all these things that I can't even, spell. He's this guy, right? Like, part of me wonders if he's an alien, or like, is he a robot, or like, so he's one of these people who, when he says something, my ears perk up, right? I listen. I'm like, oh, okay, well, if Elon Musk is saying it, there must be something there. That's how I see him. Would you agree with that to start, before we go into what I'm going to get into here?
He has a very high believability score, as a Ray Dalio would say, the hedge fund person that wrote Principles. He has a very high believability score, in the sense that he has been right. He has proven that he's right on a lot of things. There are people that short Tesla and all sorts of other things, but in general, he has a very high believability score. If you asked him that question, he would still say, start from first principles, only go based on the facts that you know, start to build the tree of knowledge that you have. Don't just assume that because somebody else has done all the work, you can go hang out on that branch, just hang off the branch and ride their coattails. So I would say yes, if he starts talking about the vertical thrust that's placed on his SpaceX rocket when it's at max, yeah, okay, I have no concept. I don't even know. I probably just made terms up. So yes, I generally take what he says, and I will look forward from where he says, as opposed to go backwards and try and verify what he's claiming.
Yeah. Okay, exactly. Me too. Now, when it comes to like conspiracy theories, or stuff that a lot of people shy away from, especially in the public eye, he doesn't, right? He goes full on into it. Now, the example that I want to bring up is, for those of you who are just listening, I'm showing a picture of a video game. Okay. It's called Deus Ex. I've never played it in my life. I don't have any idea, but this is Elon Musk's Twitter profile picture right now. Okay. I follow, he's literally the only person I follow on Twitter, him and Trump, because it's entertaining. So, right. So those are the two guys I follow on Twitter. Right. And I opened up Twitter and I saw this and I was like, what is that? I Googled it. And here it is. Elon Musk changed his picture on Twitter, called this Deus Ex video game cover. Now, the video game is about a government agent exposing the Illuminati and their deliberate release of a virus, which becomes a global pandemic that was done to control society. That's what the video game's about. That's the cover of Elon Musk's Twitter. Now, a guy like Musk, who has such influence and knowledge, and for sure he knows so much more about what's going on than I do, for example. Like, come on. What does this mean? Is he playing with us? Is he hinting? Is he just being like, what do you take from that, man?
Well, we don't have as many one-to-one meetings as I wish we did. I wish we called and texted. He doesn't write back when I send him
Me neither,
those
actually. Come
texts.
on. Oh, damn it.
I don't know what I did to end up on his naughty list, but no, I think so I've been following him on all the social handles. I've been reading about him for, I don't know, almost 10 years at this point.
Yeah.
And recently I'm a little confused because I think he's calling out to some extent, hey, he's been saying, if you follow him closely or go back and research, he's been saying that a lot of this coronavirus stuff is overplayed. It's a little bit overblown. The media is blowing this out of proportion, all that sort of stuff. He's calling out the parallel there with, hey, this originated in a lab in China, all that. I don't think there's too much in the way of conspiracy theories that I generally don't subscribe to them. I find them interesting in that they are worth going and researching, but I tend not to subscribe to them right away and just go, oh yeah, of course, that all the dots are connected. It's concerning. If I were his brand manager, I would say this doesn't seem like something worth wading into. It seems like if you wait 2 to 3 months, we probably will know more. It seems like you might be causing some more harm than good right now and dividing people more. And he is, at least from my point of view, somebody that has tremendous potential to unite. Like, he could, not quite single-handedly, but he could very well lead the charge towards, hey, humans should go back to the moon. Humans should try and get to Mars, or at least we should learn more about Mars for a number of reasons. And he's been doing a lot of that. It seems like this is a battle that isn't all that worth fighting. I get that he's angry that people are shorting his stock and writing bad articles about tweets that he's just a guy that wants to be able to tweet with people. But at the same time, you need to have some understanding of where you are in the world and how many people place you on that pedestal to some extent. Like, he could say things and most people will just take it as fact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty privileged position. Bill Gates, I think, is probably the most interesting person to watch how they've changed over time to get to that level of, he can now say things and probably almost everybody will take it as fact or important. And 25, 30 years ago, people wanted him locked up for antitrust and all sorts of other things because he was the harshest businessman alive. So I don't know. Personally, he has his own right. He should call out whomever he wants. But given his approach to being first principles and trusting the facts, show us whatever the facts are that you think are motivating that. Like, if you think that that's the case, I would love to go research that. Please show the link to something believable where I can go start seeing that. I think that's probably when he hires me as his brand manager, that'll be the first thing that we sit down and talk about.
Yeah.
Answer my text, Elon.
Yeah, Elon, come on, man. We've been trying to reach out to you here. Lewis is waiting on you, man. Come on.
Yeah, maybe Starlink's down momentarily. That's probably what's going on.
Yeah. But it's interesting. Hey, like I was very surprised when I saw that and researched what it was about, because I mean, I get it. There's so many people with so many theories and all that stuff, but someone with his clout and power and believability, that's the main thing. So many people are going to take that and just run, they'll be like, Elon said it type thing.
Exactly.
And that's dangerous. Hey, it's
Yeah,
dangerous.
it's just, you're opening yourself up to be a point of division, and he's got enough money and accomplishments that will fill most countries for the next decade. But I mean, I would just be like, it doesn't seem like we're out of the woods enough on anything coronavirus related to start taking victory laps or saying things are overblown or any of that. I would be perfectly fine hearing more about what Neuralink is up to. It's a company that people don't even talk about. He's studying like the brain to computer interface and how that could be better. Almost nobody knows that he even works on that company. And if he took the time that he spent tweeting about coronavirus and spent I don't know, that's probably what, $50 million in his time over the course of the year, and put that into a different different avenue, I feel like, hey, maybe we solve where this came from that way.
Yeah, actually, yeah, no doubt, actually, yeah, true. Hey,
These are all
well,
problems I hope to encounter at some point in my future life. I hope I have to go back and eat my words because I didn't follow the same protocol 20 years from now, and I've got 7 companies that are changing the world in every industry possible.
yeah, oh yeah, I got faith in you, man. I think that's awesome. You're totally that guy. That's awesome. No, for real. So yeah, I mean, he has lots of stuff going on. Tesla is one of them with his cars and his trucks and all that kind of stuff. Very cool technology. I love it. I think it's awesome. Um, where do you think cars are going?
Oh, I
Like, is it the Jetsons or what?
oh yeah. So I have one of my best friends. I had 2 best men at my wedding because they were I had an only child. I had 2 brothers. I say they were my college roommates, and one of them now runs. I shouldn't say runs, but he is important in the safety org at Waymo, which is the Google self-driving car projects. We've talked about some of the stuff and some of his challenges and all sorts of crazy things like what is a crash, what is a major intervention, how far do people drive, humans drive without getting into accidents, all sorts of things like that, which is a fascinating world. But um, yeah, I similar to the video games and the graphics and all that sort of stuff, humans learn to drive because we are out there driving on a regular basis for decades. When you're a 16-year-old, at least here in the States, in most states, you get your license. You're not an amazing driver on day one. You're not great. Like, yeah, you've seen others do it. You've been around it. Okay. Every human that drives has to go through that same learning process. We all have to learn, okay, don't run that red light. Don't roll through the stop sign. Oh, when it's wet, don't do these sorts of things. The computer has to learn that once, and then it's done everywhere. Now, there are some vision problems and a bunch of other things, but to say that cars won't drive themselves or computers won't be able to drive themselves, there's 0% chance that humans will be better drivers than cars. I can't tell you the year, but I think the first phase is you will end up having cars that can drive themselves. Tesla and a bunch of others can drive themselves to some extent now. They will be able to drive themselves in all situations. And when that happens, it will very quickly, like in the span of a couple of years, go from, oh no, a car I would never drive itself to, what do you mean you drove? Like, how did you as a human drive? There will be different lanes. There will be roads that are cut off just for humans to drive on because it will be so unsafe for you as a human to drive. You'll have to drive slower. You won't be able to do nearly the same stuff. It'll be worse than the safety side of things. Like, it will be crazy to think about that humans ever drove. So anyways, yeah, I am fully in that camp. And the things that you can start to do when cars can drive themselves, if you want to drive in the US from Los Angeles to San Francisco, it's a 6 or 7 hour drive. Okay, yeah, you can probably sit in the car and do that. But if you want to drive from Los Angeles to Miami, that's a couple days. Hey, why don't you just hop on a living room car or a bedroom car or a hotel room car? Like, you could just be in a car. It's not really a car anymore. You're in a room. You're in something that's driving itself. You could be conducting businesses. I mean, the ramifications here. My wife and I are looking at houses outside New York, and I have trouble buying a house near a train station because I don't think trains 25 years from now are going to be the same thing. I think they're going to get paved over, and they're just going to be ways for cars and buses to get into cities because you won't need to take the train anymore. Trains are actually like kind of a bad use of that space and transporting people. You get, yeah, in high times it makes sense, but we have trains that go by regularly where we live, and there'll be 50 people on an 8-car train. Are you saying that 10 cars taking 5 people wouldn't have been a better use? Like, you get one of those trains every hour. We could have a car leaving in real time. That changes property values. The business that I think people that are still listening after we've been having all this fun, if you want a business idea that'll be good in 10 to 12, however many years, start a garage renovation company. There's going to be no reason for you to own a car that parks in your garage. Like, why would you? So what are people going to turn their garages into in the future? Your car's going to be out driving and making you money. Chances are you're not going to own a car. You're going to have an Uber membership. You're just going to have an unlimited Uber membership. Why would you own a car if you could just have one pull up, drive you anywhere for free? Anyways, yeah, I have crazy thoughts that could fill a very long self-driving car trip somewhere with a lot of these theories. But if you start a garage renovation company, please just send 1% checks. I can give you my address. Send me a direct mail, a DM, and I'll give you the address.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it makes a lot of sense, man. It makes a lot of sense. Like when we're traveling around and doing what we do, my wife and I, like, we travel a lot. We go to cities, we go places and do stuff. Uber, man. It's Uber every single time. It's Uber. We were in Manila last year a lot. We used to live in the Philippines. When we go to Manila and hang out in the city with our friends, working professionals that live and work there, and that's their home, they Uber everywhere. They don't have cars. Why? Because it's a pain in the ass. Traffic's terrible. They're in the car. They're doing meetings. They have their laptops. They're conducting business in the car on the way to the next place. Some of our friends are like actresses and musicians and stuff, and they'll be going from like a gig to an office, or like a dress rehearsal to another one, and in the middle they'll be doing an interview on Zoom or a podcast in the van, the Uber van. And that's exactly what you're saying, right? Like, they don't drive themselves around. And that's just, I feel like, now I could be wrong here, but I feel like Asia seems to have this a little bit more dialed than the West. Now, again, I'm not in San Diego and these places, but I'm here in Canada, and in my hometown here where I am currently, like, there aren't even taxis here. Everybody drives pickup trucks. You know what I mean? But like, you go to Shanghai or Hong Kong or something, like, nobody's driving themselves around. Like, literally nobody.
it,
Singapore, same
it
thing.
doesn't make sense. To
It
some
doesn't make.
extent, if you it, to go back to the economics thing, if you think about the opportunity cost of you driving somewhere for 2 hours, or you sitting in traffic day in and day out. Let's say somebody makes, I don't know, these numbers aren't going to be perfect, but let's say somebody makes $100,000 a year, and that breaks down to roughly $50 an hour if it's a full-time job. If it only costs you $3 to drive somewhere, but you get to, in effect, work an extra hour, you're making $47 extra to have Uber or whomever take you there while you write an email, do a podcast, do something else. Like, why would you be wasting that opportunity to make the money? You don't need to work all day. That's not what I'm trying to advocate for, but
You could take a
just
nap.
saying, you could leave an hour, you could leave work an hour earlier, get in an hour later if you're making the hour in the car productive. And that, I think, in these times with coronavirus and everything else, it's many people no longer have their commute. And what are you doing with that time? Maybe you're spending it with your family. Maybe you're going on a run. People are getting in shape. Who knows what? If you're using that time differently, it's going to be a lot weirder when you go back and have to sacrifice that time and do something different with it. And I think that's this has some silver linings, in the sense that I think this is pushing remote work and the need to be at an office 5 days a week and all that sort of stuff. I think it's accelerating that push towards being able to be more remote for a bunch of jobs 5-10 years further ahead than we would have organically gotten to.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's crazy. I transitioned from brick and mortar to remote working online and all this stuff just this year, right? I'm only like 6 months into being full-time online entrepreneur away from our brick and mortars that we had in Asia. And now all of a sudden, like, I've been telling my friends that are working brick and mortar still, I'm like, there's this thing called Zoom where, like, we all get together and we have meetings and stuff. And, you don't need to commute to work. You can just do it from home. Like, I literally put on a suit top and I wear my boxer shorts. I do it all the time when I'm doing sales calls and I'm training salespeople. That's what I kind of do on the side, right? Is training sales. I'll be teaching them sales stuff with my suit on and my boxer shorts. And I'll tell my friends this, or my wife will be like, they'll be laughing at me. And I'm just saying, like, this is the future. I'm telling you, it's the future. And I've been preaching on this for like a year and a half now. Now, all of a sudden, it's normal. And everyone's like, oh, you can work from home. I'm like, yeah, you can. It's awesome. Let's all do it.
This is a fundamental bet that we saw that you could do it to some extent. There are some former Googlers that are now part of the company, part of my company, and we saw that this was the future to some extent. More offices were being opened remote, and people were able to work from home more often. And we said there are a bunch of people out there that want to work on their own thing but can't for whatever reason. I think that there's both I want to work from home, and I only want to work a couple of days a week. So what we do is we'll take people that only want to work 2 or 3 days a week, and if that's enough to cover your living expenses because you're living somewhere lower cost of living than Tokyo or LA or New York, hey, you might be able to make ends meet on 2 days a week, and you can go surfing, or you could be an artist, or you could write a book. Like, you could do all these other things because you're able to do in 2 days a week, you're able to do the job that otherwise you would have had to spend a full week doing, or you would never have had to have those other opportunities. And we are hiring people with that in mind, like, hey, part-time, it's not really part-time. It's, can you do enough to work on a few clients of ours? Can you do enough to help the company? Great. It doesn't really matter whether that's 15 hours a week or 60, if you want it to be 60. Like, let's figure out what that looks like, what's right for you. And I think more and more companies are going to go that way in the future. And we're betting on that tailwind to some extent. And there are a lot of really bright people that don't wake up trying to work 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day of the week at an office. Like, that's just not what they want to do. And we want to take advantage of that opportunity and get those people to work with us.
Yeah, for sure, man. Totally. It's awesome. It's awesome. Very forward thinking. And I completely agree with you, man. Cool, man. Lewis, well, it's been a pleasure, man. I don't want to keep it too much longer. We've been going here like 8 hours or something. So man, once you start talking about futures and parallel timelines and robotics and stuff, I could literally go down a rabbit hole with you for days. So we'll call
we
it.
have no idea. We have no idea what Elon Musk has come up with in the last 2 hours. I bet while we've been sitting here talking about what he's done, he's probably he's patented something else. He's probably cured a disease, and there's some folks going to Mars that we don't even know about. So we got to get back to it, right?
Yeah, we do. Exactly. Cool, man. Lewis, it's been a pleasure, man. I really enjoyed our conversation, man. It really did. For the listeners who are looking to see your businesses and find you on social media and stuff, where can they find you?
Yeah. The company is Crimson Advantage. The website's crimsonadvantage.com, and most of our profiles and everything are linked off of there. I am very boring, so most of the handles and everything aside from TikTok are at Lewis Amira. TikTok, don't try and find me. I haven't posted anything interesting yet, but stay tuned. I'm trying to figure out anything remotely interesting that I can do.
Dance moves.
My wife's trying to get me to do some dance moves. I'm like, I am going to spare the poor people that are the TikTok content improvers. They're going to flag that as indecent or something. They're going to be like, this guy needs to have his account shut down. So
funny. Yeah, man, that's cool. Yeah, so everything's linked in the show notes here. You can go find Lewis out there on the internet. Cool stuff, man. I love it. It's been a pleasure having you on the Growth Podcast. Thanks for making the time.
I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to talking more about all sorts of things. We can talk biotech. We can talk singularity a little bit more. I mean, we'll do a recap in a year or two, come back and see how many of these predictions we got wrong. So let's see what we can come up with.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I'd love to have you back, man. Thanks for being here.
Really appreciate it.